You see mitzvah Ayin Chet, it's page Shin Kaf Zayin. Page Shin Kaf Zayin. So you're page Shin. I see Shin Kaf Zayin. Yeah. Cool. Mitzvat Hataya Acharei Rabim. The commandment to follow the majority. Okay, Hataya Charabim, to follow the majority ruling. Yeah. We had the pasuk. Yeah, here let's see the Sefer HaChinuch. Lintot acharei rabim. Okay. Yeah, to follow, to go after the majority. והוא כשיפול מחלוקת בין החכמים בין מדיני התורה כולה, בדין מדיני התורה כולה, וכמו כן בדין פרטי, כלומר בדין שיהיה בין ראובן ושמעון, על דרך משל. So if there's a machloket between the chachamim, either regarding how to interpret a certain, or not interpret, regarding a certain Torah law, or regarding a court case between Reuven and Shimon, yeah, let's say Reuven sues Shimon, okay? And there is a machloket. You understand, there the machloket is not necessarily on Dinei Torah. Sometimes the machloket is, how do I interpret reality, meaning
civil matters.
Yeah, whatever. כשתהיה מחלוקת בין דייני עירם, שקצתם דנים לחיוב וקצתם לפתור, that the מחלוקת is, let's say, regarding this din that is between Reuven and Shimon, then the city court, some hold this way, some hold this way. So the ruling is, the mitzvah is, this mitzvah that is in Parshat Mishpatim, Lintot achar harov leolam, to always go after the majority. Shene'emar, and here's the verse, acharei rabim lehatot. You should, lehatot is to decide, or whatever, based on majority ruling. Uveviu amu zichronam lebracha, and in the Gemara and Chulin, they say, ruba de oraita. Yeah, this concept of rov, majority, has a validity of the oraita. Okay?
It's as if the Torah says it. It's as if the Torah rules that way.
Yeah, it's a Torah ruling that one has to follow the majority. Okay, so that's the mitzvah. Follow the majority. That's mitzvah in chet. Uvchirat rov ze. If you remember, there are always 4 parts in Sefer HaChinuch, right? So we're now in the first part still, which is the basic definition of the mitzvah. Uvchirat rov ze lefi hadome, and it seems, he says, that הוא בששני הכיתות החולקות יודעות בחוכמת התורה שווה. All of this that we follow, that we choose the majority, and we follow the majority, it seems, he says, okay, it seems that applies when the 2 groups that are disputing are both basically have the same Torah knowledge and wisdom. She'ein lomar, he said, שכת חכמים מועטת לא תוכיח כת בורים מרובה. אפילו כיוצא מצרים. He says, it doesn't make sense if I have a minority of big Talmidei Chachamim and a majority of burim, of Amaratzis. So even if he says I have 60,000 kiyotze Mitzrayim, let's say I have 60,000 idiots. Okay, I'm a little blunt. He doesn't say idiots. He says 60,000 people who are totally ignorant of Torah, and a small group of very knowledgeable Talmidei Chachamim. He says it's not relevant in such a case to say that let's say my father is a math professor, so let's say he and his colleague say something in mathematics, and then we gather all the people who have no clue in advanced mathematics, and they're saying, no, you guys are wrong. Obviously, we'll say we follow the people who are knowledgeable in the field. Okay? So he says, All of this statement of the Torah, you should follow the majority, is when the two groups that are disputing, the minority and the majority, are people that are basically having the same knowledge of Torah and wisdom of Torah. אבל בהשוויית החוכמה או בקרוב, הודייתנו לתורה, או בקירוב, he says, he's realistic, he knows that it's impossible to always assess whether they're exactly in the same level. He says, if basically, or they're close to being in the same level, so the Torah informed us that the majority of the opinions, and here he says something interesting, יסכימו לעולם אל האמת יותר מן המיעוט. They will probably reach that there is a better chance that they will reach the truth than the minority. The Torah informed us that the majority is what is the truth and more than the minority. ובין שיסכימו לאמת או לא יסכימו לדעת השומע, and whether the one that is listening to the ruling thinks or doesn't think that the majority ruled the truth, הדין נותן שלא נסור מדרך הרוב. The law says that we should not deviate, we should not go away from the majority ruling. ומה שאני אומר, now the Sefer HaChinuch says, and what I'm claiming, כי בחירת הרוב לעולם הוא בששני הכיתות החולקות שוות בחוכמת האמת, כי כן נאמר בכל מקום חוץ מן הסנהדרין. כי כן נאמר בכל מקום חוץ מן הסנהדרין. What I told you, that this whole rule of follow the majority is applicable and was said only when the two groups are equal or close to be equal in the Chokhmah of the Torah or in the Chokhmah of the Emes. He says this is said everywhere aside from Sanhedrin. Shebahem, if there's a machlokus within the Sanhedrin, לא נדקדק בהיותם חולקים, we won't start to assess which group, איזו כת יודעת יותר. Let's say there's 71 judges, right, in Sanhedrin. Let's say 40 are ruling one way, 31 the other way. He says we won't try to assess and say, but if the 31 are, it's known that they're bigger rabbis than the 40, then the rule is not applicable. He says, no, that's the exception. There we won't check it. Why? We'll always follow the majority. והטעם, לפי שהם היו בחשבון מחויב מן התורה. Because this is a number, 71, okay, that the Torah, it's a Torah din that there should be 71 judges. והוא כאילו צוותה התורה בפירוש, אחר רוב של אלו תעשו כל ענייניכם. And it's as if the Torah explicitly command us, you should just follow the majority of the Sanhedrin, period. Ve'od, and another explanation, Shem kulam hayu chachamim gdolim. So that's already, he backs up. He says, Tachlis, they're all big and smart rabbis. So that is just an explanation why why it doesn't contradict what he said before. But Tachlis, his first teretz is that, even if it contradicts, here we're saying you're following the majority no matter what. Okay, let's stop here for a second because the Sefer HaChinuch raised up some interesting concepts. First of all, if I would ask you, Yechezkel, why are we following the majority? Would you answer, we're following the majority because the probability of that the majority are more correct?
In a secular system, I would say that, like jury, the concept of a jury actually you need unanimity, but I think in general in a secular system we would say that majority should rule, and just because statistically we get closer to it, but here we have kind of the backing of the mitzvah here. The mitzvah tells us.
So I'm Dafka not sure. Dafka, it's interesting that you're saying the secular will say that it's just there's a better chance that the majority are correct. I think we have tons of examples in democracy when the majority are dumb, stupid, and meaning I don't see necessarily a correlation between majority and truth.
No correlation. Obviously, there are exceptions, but I'd imagine that there's correlation.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's an interesting. I mean, it's a known argument that the Sefer HaChinuch says. It's not that clear. I think that the basis maybe to follow the majority could be also for the peace of the society. I mean that we need at the end of the day we need to decide something, so it makes more sense that we'll follow the majority, not because they're more correct, but because that is more acceptable. I mean, that would pass with more peace or whatever. Or what I want to say here, I'm just giving the example that the decision rule, the rule of decision that you follow the majority, has also a reason that has nothing to do with truth, but rather with avoiding anarchy, creating a certain mechanism of decision making when people disagree with each other. Okay?
Something better. I mean, what are you going to say? Go out for the minority?
Biduk. So I'm just saying, and it's interesting though, but the Sefer HaChinuch says no, it's an indication of truth. And consequently, what I want to say is, perhaps, it's very appealing to say that in his first teretz regarding the Sanhedrin, why in the Sanhedrin, I don't care. In his first teretz, he says that in Sanhedrin, I don't care whether the minority, but now, okay, just before I skipped something. Since he bases all his argument on Rov, as we say, as a Beirur, meaning Rov as an indication of truth. So obviously he says when the minority, it's evident that the minority is much more skilled and wise and whatever. So of course then there's no basis to apply this rule. Okay? If the whole point is seeking for the truth,
then you have to pay attention to
then of course the minute that the minority is smarter, then obviously the majority is not an indication of truth. Okay? And he just says, therefore, this rule doesn't apply. I mean, if the minority is smarter, then this doesn't apply. But then he says, in Sanhedrin, even if the minority is smarter, we will still follow the majority. That's what he says in his first teretz. Now,
comes back to perhaps maybe it's defined the truth that exposes the truth. Majority exposes the real truth.
The opposite. Exactly the opposite. I'm surprised by you because I now said in Sanhedrin, he says, even if I know clearly that the minority is smarter, I'll still follow the majority.
Presumably because that's what exposes the truth, no?
What exposes the truth?
The majority.
No, because the minority is smarter. So the chance is that the minority is right.
I think the opposite. I think then we would follow the minority, wouldn't we?
The
fact that we're following the majority.
Okay, so let's. I see there is confusion here. So let's first sort the details of what he's saying. He's saying, generally speaking, we follow the majority because it has a better chance that that's the truth. Point number one. Point number two. Consequently, when the minority is evidently much smarter than the minority, we won't. This rule is not applicable, and we won't follow the majority. That's point number two. Point number three. Surprisingly enough, he says, an exception to what I said in points 1 and 2, or point 2 more clearly, an exception to what I said in point 2. In Sanhedrin, even if it's clear to me that the minority is smarter, I will still follow the majority.
Presumably because the following the majority would expose the truth.
Why? We said it already.
That's what's surprising.
So no, clearly that doesn't make sense, because he said that's an exception. Now we need to understand that exception, and we can't explain that exception that here it exposes that it does not, because as he said, when the minority is smarter, obviously the majority is no indication of the truth. So what happens in Sanhedrin? So here, I think it's dafka very neat. Makes a lot of sense. In Sanhedrin, it's a court sitting together. You can't have an anarchy. Sanhedrin has to establish one Torah to the people. Meaning here, the consideration is not what will expose the truth, okay? Like in Stam Machloket about something, not in Sanhedrin, and from Chachamim about Dinei Torah. Rather, here we're talking about the institution that it is establishing for Klal Yisrael. What is the Torah? That the Torah will be one and will not be two Torahs. If this is the case, you need just, and that's he says there is Xeris HaKatuv that you have 71. And yeah, these 71 are not necessarily on the same level. Let's say they're the best in Israel, these 71, but still there can be gaps among them. But the Torah established that the body that will define the Torah Shebaal Peh or whatever, or that judge in Dinei Nefesh, whatever, is, at certain cases, is that Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin. So there, even if the minority are smarter, what can you do? You need to establish a certain decision, as we said, procedural, institutional rules, okay? And it makes sense there will be that that you follow the majority, okay? But even if it's not necessarily the truth, you just want to avoid anarchy. Now, let's see the next paragraph. Mishorshei mitzvah zo. I think what's nicer in this Sefer, I don't know that you see the two layers. You see one reasoning is the reasoning of what brings the better chances to figure out the truth. And the second thing is a more institutional, procedural. Mishorshei mitzvah zo. So now we'll give the reasons. שנצטווינו בזה לחזק קיום דתנו. שינו נצטווינו, that we were commanded by this to strengthen the קיום of our Torah, of our religion. שאילו נצטווינו, קיימו התורה כאשר תוכלו להשיג כוונת אמיתתה, כל אחד ואחד מישראל יאמר, דעתי נותנת שאמיתת עניין פלוני כן. He says, if the commandment was, you should keep this Torah as you understand, then we'll have 3 million interpretations of the Torah. And let's say that would be the rule of the Torah. Each one is obligated to follow the Torah the way he understands. Then, then a destruction will be the outcome of this. שתעשה התורה ככמה תורות. Torah will end up being multiple Torahs. כי כל אחד ידין כפי עניות דעתו. Everyone will rule according to his understanding. And we'll have just 60,000 whatever and 6 million Torahs. And there won't be one Torah to Am Yisrael. But now when we were commanded explicitly to accept the opinion of the majority, there is one Torah for all of us. And that is our fulfilling. And we're not moving from their opinion. And when we're doing the way they ruled, how the majority of the Chachamim ruled, we are actually doing the commandment of God. Meaning he's aware that sometimes they will be mistaken, the sages. And he's not saying no. The Torah says that always the majority, it's 100% true. No, he says, even if the Chachamim, let's say, Chas v'Shalom, are mistaken, the majority of the Chachamim, we should still follow them, because there will be anarchy. There won't be one Torah if it won't happen. And that's God's commandment, to follow them. And even if they're Chas v'Shalom mistaken, aleim yeh chatat v'lo aleim. Then the sin is on them and not on the followers. The sugya in the Bavli Horayos, Shebedin sheta'u b'ho'ah, a court that erred in their ruling, v'asa yachid al pihem, and the individual followed their erroneous ruling, shem b'chiyuv ha'korban, lo yachid klal. They need to bring the offering, not him. It seems that the ha'ar here, it's not the yachid, it's actually the kahal. Zulati b'tzdadim meforashim sham. Okay, this is a little complicated what he said. I learned Horayos. It's much more complicated. But what he claims here is that, the reason for this commandment is in order to avoid multiple Torahs in Am Yisrael. Now, of course, such a reasoning Dafka doesn't necessarily strengthen the first or main argument. He said that majority has more chances to be true. Even if it doesn't have more chances to be true, we need to avoid that there'll be many Toros. But he holds both. It's fine. Okay, he holds both. And of course, when is it more probable that it's true? Only when the two groups are even in their Torah wisdom. Dinei mitzvah, the details and the dinim of the mitzvah. Like the distinction between majority in dinei mamonot and in dinei nefashot. The dinei nefashot, you need a stronger majority. And how many people we need a quorum that we need for dinei nefashot. We can't, let's say, have 3 dayanim for dinei nefashot as opposed to dinei mamonot. And also, the dayanim in dinei nefashot should be with smicha. הסמיכה עדות להם שהם חכמים ונבונים ושלמים שאומרים לעשות כל דבר אל אדם ולא נמית אנשים על פי אנשים חסרי חוכמה פנית ובדין. We will not execute people based on judges that are not well enough, with well enough knowledge. ולמיתיים תשלומים. Once you killed someone, it's not reversible. ושבדיני נפשות המלמדים זכות אין חוזרים מלמדים חובה ובדיני ממונות אין כן. In דיני נפשות, one who was the melamed zchut cannot then retract and the melamed chova. And in dinim mamonot dafka you could change your mind. I mean, you could say arguments to both sides. שופטים בזכות בדיני נפשות. והנה נסתלק הפותח בכך מכת המחייבת. ושהכל מלמדים זכות בין רב בין תלמיד ואת הפרטים מובהרים במסכת סנהדרין. Next page. ונוהגת בכל מקום ובכל זמן בזכרים ובנקבות. That you need to follow the majority. Everyone is obligated in this. ועובר עליה ולא נטה אחריהם. If one didn't follow the majority of the חכמים, ביטל עשה. He canceled the נעשה. עונשו גדול מאוד. And his punishment is very severe. Why? Look, שהוא העמוד שהתורה נסמכת בו. This is a foundation, a pillar that the Torah is leaning or is relying on. Because if you take away this concept of follow majority ruling, you have anarchy, you have multiple Torahs, etc. So that's why it's an amud that the Torah is nismechet. Now it's very interesting, you see, there is a little tension here in Sefer HaChinuch. That's my personal comment, I'm not saying. He starts with something that is not necessarily restricted to Beit Din or whatever. But then at the end he really speaks about, Sanhedrin, Dayanim, etc. Now let's see the Minchat Chinuch. You see Lintot, it's in the left-hand side in the bottom. הנה זה מבואר בש"ס כמה פעמים, דאזלינן בתערובה, מפסוק זה. Yeah, it's explicit in the Shas, in several locations, that we're following the majority, and the basis is this pasuk, Acharei Rabim Lehatot. Okay? Okay? ומנהל שדבר זה חידש הרב המחבר מסברתו. Like the Rav, he says the Sefer HaChinuch presents this as a svara of his, okay? That we're following the majority based on this pasuk, and he gives a reason, but he says, but actually it's an explicit Gemara in Yevamos, claims the Minchat Chinuch. Beit Shammai yasu kedivrihem. Yeah. What is the chiddush of the Rav? Okay, he says, the Sefer HaChinuch says, as if he has a great chiddush, that he limits this pasuk only when they're even, right? But when the minority is smarter, then this pasuk is not, doesn't apply. He says, it is presented as a chiddush of the Rav. And he's right, because look at the wordings of the Sefer HaChinuch. Ufchirat rov ze lefi hadumei. He says it seems that it's only when they're even. It seems, meaning it's as if he is applying his reason for the commandment, and consequently he says where does it apply and where it doesn't apply. He says, but actually what he says as his own chiddush is pretty explicit, and the Gemara in Yevamos claims the Minchas Chinuch. Beit Shammai yasu kedivrihem, that Beit Shammai kept on doing their opinion, after Beit Hillel Ruba, even though Beit Hillel outnumbered them. The Chias Linan Betaruba, we are following the majority. The Gemara says, only when they're together. Hacha Beit Shammai, that we're not together, where they're even. Hacha Beit Shammai mechadedei tfei. Yeah? There, Beit Shammai are more sharp. Ayin sham dein cholek. Aha! So he says, so you see that what he says is explicit in the Gemara. The Gemara is giving a reason. Why didn't Beit Shammai follow the majority ruling? Because they were smarter. Vaf lachar basko, and even after the heavenly voice came out and said that halacha is like Beit Hillel, okay? Haynu de'abat kol haya machriya. The ruba shelahem machriya chidut shel Beit Shammai. The heavenly voice actually revealed or said that their majority should overrule the wisdom of Beit Shammai. Aval b'kol duchte, but when there is no heavenly voice, v'dai tzrichim hakatot liot ki adadei. When I don't have a heavenly voice, so they need to be even. Or aval im yadinan. But if we know shamiut gdolim arbe yoter b'chachma, if we know that the minority are much more wise than the majority, v'adai lo azlinan b'taruba. It's clear that we don't follow the majority. Vein cholek b'gmal, no one disputes in the Gemara. V'divrei harav mechaber berum. Therefore, he says what he says out of his own svara is explicit in their Gemara. But tzarich iyun shelo ivia shasan alenei. I have a kasha on him that he presented it as his own chiddush and didn't bring
As a source. The Gemara.
And it didn't bring this Gemara. Now, actually, when you open that Gemara, there is one opinion says that Beit Shammai followed their own thing. But there is another opinion there in the Gemara. He says no one disputes the concept of more smart. But what he doesn't say that there is an opinion that actually all of this is in the explanation that holds that Beit Shammai didn't do what Beit Hillel ruled, but did what they own. But there is another opinion in that they did follow the ruling of Beit Hillel. So if they follow the rule of Beit Hillel, then that's against what the Sefer HaChinuch here is saying. So it's not that pashut. Okay, he says, why didn't bring me that Gemara? Okay. Yeah. Here, Rabbi Shmuel Shimoni comments, let's say the footnote here, look, it says, Kedivrei HaChinuch nira gam ken shitat Rav Hai Gaon. Actually, when you look at this Rav Hai Gaon, at least Rav Shimoni claims it's not exactly what the Sefer HaChinuch says. Look at what the Chinuch says here. Again, I'll read. Uvchirat rov zeh, I'm reading again just the beginning. לפי בשני הכיתות ידועות בחוכמה, שאין לומר שכת חכמים מועטת לא תכריע כת בורים. It's clear that a minority that is smart will actually overrule a minority that is ignorant. So it seems that if I'm saying the whole thing is how do I figure out what is the truth? So tachlis, when there is a minority, I should follow the minority, the smart minority. Rav Hai Gaon, so according to that, actually Beit Hillel should follow Beit Shammai because they're smarter. Rav Hai Gaon, actually, what he says, which fits the Gemara more, he says that when they're not even, then just this rule doesn't apply. Mm-hmm. But then you're left that everyone can do what he thinks is right. And maybe the Sefer HaChinuch also means that. So I'm not sure how much this shtickle distinction that he does is really true. Okay. At any rate, let's continue the Minchas Chinuch. V'nei ze pashut. And behold, this is clear. אם נחלקו באופן דאזרינן בתערובה, בוודאי הם מועטים עצמם, אף שדעתם להיפך, מכל מקום צריכים לבטל דעתם ולעשות בעצמם כמו הרוב. כמו שמובא בש"ס ליבמוס שם. Meaning, where the rule is applicable, says the Minchat Chinuch, clearly the minority should themselves act like the opinion of the majority against their own opinion. As it's explicit in Yemot, Man de Amar lo asu Beit Shammai kedivreihem, the ones that said that Beit Shammai did not do their opinion, but rather did what Beit Hillel, they Beit Hillel ruva, utzrochim acholkim batzmam alech achar harov. Ach leman de Amar asu de lo have ruva. Yeah? So, obviously, the opinion there that said that the law is still applicable even regarding Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. So Beit Shammai had to follow the ruling of Beit Hillel. Let's continue. Just trying. Yeah. Okay, we'll do some more stuff. ובמקום ששני הכיתות שוות ואין רוב באחת, או שהיו חכמים יותר די אפשר להכריע, כעד בית שמאי ובית הלל, when they're even, either when it's a tie, meaning in numbers, or that the minority is smarter, like in Beit Shammai, and he understands, like I brought in the name of Rav Haigaon, that in such a case you're just stuck. There's no rule. Mevoar beperakama d'avodah zara and the Rambam d'im shnei chachamim cholkim b'hem shavim. B'shel Torah halacha chara machmer the Sofrim halacha chara mekel. Meaning here you will apply just that in Torah laws when you have a tie. Okay? In Torah law you should be stringent. In rabbinic laws you should be lenient. That is only regarding the crowd. But the Chachamim themselves, each one should follow his own svara. As it says regarding Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. And because this rule by the Torah going to the stringent, by the rabbinic thing follow the more lenient, it's because the crowd, they're just in a suffix. There's a tie between the rabbis, so they're in a suffix. But the rabbi himself is not in a suffix. It's very clear to him what's the truth. Okay. Definitely חזקה מועיל ברי, וכאן פשוט לכל אחד יעשה כסברתו, אפילו להקל. והעולם הולכים לחומרה, meaning he goes very far with that. He says the rabbi that is lenient should not be afraid. If he's sure that that's the ruling, that's what he should do. If he was authorized to it, etc. Now, of course, he speaks here.
Lead to the same problem.
He speaks here about machlokos, etc., Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel. But again, when there is Sanhedrin, that's a different ballgame. Their majority, period. And I said, I think the argument is the institutional argument. Let's see. Below nasu v'natnu beinehem. That's important. V'ayim begeit pashut sof haperek bekuntris haklalim. Dazazim b'taruba mina Torah. The fact that we're following the majority ruling according to Torah. Davka krishna kitot nasu v'natnu yachad bedin ze panim el panim. It's only when the two groups actually had a discussion. They sat around one table, face to face. Then and only then you apply the rule acharei rabim lehato, the majority. Avalim lo nasu v'natnu yachad. If they didn't have a discussion together, hakol echad kotev da'ato b'fnei atzmo kesifrei poskim. He says, let's say nowadays, he says, Menchat Chinuch, that sifrei poskim. This rabbi sat here alone and wrote his opinions and his essays, and this rabbi sat here. It was never a discussion, a direct discussion. Okay, so he says, that's very important. I'm not counting how many rabbis, and again, by the way, it's very relevant things. I remember as a kid, like arguments with Haredim and all stuff. That most of the rabbis think this way, or most of the rabbis are not Zionist, or most of the rabbis are thinking that you shouldn't serve in the army, whatever, First of all, there was never, as he says here, the concept of the majority here is not relevant because no one sat together and had a discussion. Okay?
Just say their own thing.
Everyone says their own thing. But he says it's also regarding halachic matters. I'm saying, again, let's say there are machlokas on Hilchos Shabbos. I won't just count the books that are saying what it's mutter, count the books that say the Asr said there's a majority here. Doesn't make sense. Because of what he says, there was no direct discussion. B, I'm not saying here, and that has to do with the points that they made before about the quality. Not all the books are of the same quality. I mean, there are some young rabbis writing books. There's some, you understand what I'm saying? I can't compare. I mean, I have some understanding, let's say that Rav Lichtenstein and Rav Lior, that's not the same league as, Rabbi Kannai, okay? You understand? You understand what?
If you should say that.
Like I know my place, okay? I'm not one of the Poskei Hador, okay?
I guess for a few cases, it makes sense that a person could say that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not clear. Sometimes it's a lot closer.
Absolutely. At any rate, regardless of the point that I made now, why it's not smart to just count books and he says it clearly. The counting here is not relevant because the whole concept of majority, he says, is only when there is a direct discussion together. So even if the majority says, but if everyone writes his own opinion on his own, like the books of the poskim, even if the majority agree to one opinion, we will not, in such a case, follow Kai Gavna Loazlin and Betaruba. The Efsharim Ayunosim and Panim al Panim, because there's always the possibility if there was a direct discussion, then the majority will concede to the minority. Maybe the minority would convince them. Yeah, then this book, Get Pashut, it's an important book. He also wrote at length, he says, regarding a very interesting law that is called Kimli. That a person, an individual, can say, follow a minority opinion. In some cases, it says, I hold like this, Rabbi. He has a backup. So probably the basis for that is exactly what he said, that there was actually no majority decision because there was no opportunity for the minority to convince the majority. Yeah, okay. Yeah, what do you want to...
But they wouldn't be able to say Kimli if there had been a proper
discussion. That's the point. Now he says something interesting. Let's read. He says in Dinei Nefashot, you need a stronger majority, like in the courts. Klal dinze. The general rule regarding this law. Derov noeg bekol inyan shebatorah. That majority holds regarding every single thing regarding the Torah. Hen bedinei nefashot, hen bedinei mamonot, uveisur veheter. Meaning, majority is a concept regarding all fields of Torah. Okay? Nefashos, mamonot, isur veheter. Okay? And then he says, V'afshein olchim b'mamon acharov. Kashya. We have a statement, a rule, written several times in the Babylonian Talmud. Ein holchim b'mamon achar harov. Let me explain. Okay. I need a good example here. That's your cell phone. Hold it, please. Okay, I now claim that you stole it from me, and that's my cell phone.
I disagree.
Okay, I know. So now we go to court, and the people, what will the Dayanim tell me?
Prove it.
Prove it. Who has the burden of the proof?
The person making the claim.
Of course. You. The phone is in your hands. Okay? I didn't bring witnesses that you stole it from me. If I'll bring witnesses that you stole it from me, then I'll be able to collect it. I gave the example about the cell. But of course, it's the more simple example is just regarding money. Let's say I just bump into you and say, oh, Yecheskel, you owe me 200 shekel. I gave you a loan. You owe me. And you say, I don't know what you're talking about. If I don't have witnesses, tough. I mean, no one will change the status quo without two witnesses. We call it hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. The burden of the proof is the one that wants to take from someone else. One that issues the claim. Yeah? The burden of the proof is on him. Now let's say there is a majority. I brought something that the probability is all kinds of cases where, let's say, I sold you a cow and it was an exchange deal. Okay? That and we exchange a donkey and a cow. Okay? And when you do the mashicha of the donkey, that minute I really acquire the cow from you. And at that moment that you did it, in that moment it gave birth. All kinds of
classic Gemara story.
No, so we're saying tachlis, and then we'll say, okay, what is the majority statistically? So when there are some ways, let's say I didn't bring proofs that you owe me money, but I have some statistical proof, probability that won't be enough. In order to take money from you, majority is not enough. I need 2 kosher witnesses or something like this. We won't use majority in order to take money from someone. That's ein holchim b'mamon achar harov. Now,
that's a different kind of rov, though. Now,
you're absolutely right. But now there's afshe ein holchim b'mamon achar harov. Mikol kol rov zeh the dayanim holchin acharav. Yeah. Now he points out to a certain paradox, or not paradox. He makes a clarity here. He says, if, let's say, we are Reuven and Shimon, as he said, are disagreeing about a monetary case, and there's a majority of dayanim that rule, okay, I claim that you owe me 200 shekel. And you say no. And then I tell the story. Why do I? Because once you broke my window and whatever. And then you tell your narrative. Yes, I broke the window, but it was agreed. Whatever, I don't know what. So there's a whole discussion here. And then it's complicated. And they need to decide. And guess what? A minority thought that you don't owe me. But a majority thought that I owe you, that you owe me. Here, we will take money from you, even though it was based on majority.
That's majority of the opinions. Once the evidence is already in, and the majority of the opinions.
Exactly. So there is a distinction here. He just points out to that. Even though we don't follow majority regarding statistics or whatever regarding taking money from changing the status quo regarding money. However, this kind of majority of judges, we do follow. And there is a Tosfos that says this. Uve urim v'tumim hanal. Rabbi Kannai b'shitz, what he interpret their words. V'chen kaimalam pikuach nefesh en olchim achar harov. Yeah, pikuach nefesh, even there is a suffix in a minority of pikuach nefesh, we will say it's pikuach nefesh. Okay. Okay. Now, I just want to present you what this Tosfos in Bava Kama. Tosfos in Bava Kama asked that question. We don't follow majority in Mamonot, and here we do. So the Tosfos says the following. I'm reading his words. Okay, you don't have it. I'm reading his words. Hatam gabei dayanim shiny. There, regarding judges, it's different. The chashiv miutidu kemi sheino. Meaning he feels that he needs to explain the difference. Not only saying it's different, it's 2 different kinds of majority. So after all, you're basing yourself here on majority and not on something definite, because some dayanim dafka held like Yechezkel. So he says the minority is considered as if it's none. Now he says what you said, because it's Beit Din who are taking out of it. So he says, the court as a whole decided. Meaning, the minority is part of that court. So it's as if there's no minority here. Because at the end of the day, there is a decision. There's a decision, the minority kind of accepted the rule. I mean, they accept that this is the rule of decision of the court that they're part of. So here it's as if the minority is gone. Okay, the minority was canceled, okay, you could say. Because it's a one-body decision, a court decision. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, we see it as a court decision. It was a one body, one entity. Okay, I want to skip here something. Let's see. Yeah, we have, the Ben Noach case is interesting. You know what? We'll just skip now to the end of the Sefer HaChinuch. Shin Lamed. Flip the page. ועובר על זה ביטל עשה, right? נראה דאף אם הוא עושה להחמיר נגד הרוב, עובר בעשה זו, כי צריך לבטל דעתו. Even if he is...
He thinks he's doing better by being machmir.
Yeah, no. ואם עושה להקל, חוץ ממה שעובר בעשה, אם חולקים באיסור, then he, of course, he just transgresses an isur. And you get lashes, even a karas. Because the Torah gave to the Chachmei Hador to establish what is the din of the Torah, and lo b'shamayim hi. V'nira pashut im Chachmei Hador chalukim be'izadin be'isur v'heter. Let's say they have a machlokes. They're the rabbis of the generations regarding a certain, I don't know, if this item is kosher or not kosher. Okay? חוץ מדינים שצריך בית בשעת מעשה כמו דיני נפשות או דיני ממונות, והולכים אחר הרוב, אין חילוק, אפילו חכמים קטנים מצטרפים לרוב אם הם חכמים, ואל תסתכל בקנקן. וכן נשים חכמוניות, כמו דבורה, ששפטה את ישראל. אכן בבית זה דין שצריך בית דין, צריכים בית דין כשר. אבל אם מחלוקת באיזה דבר, אין שום חילוק, רק מישהו חכם, חשבין על דעתו, ומי שיהיה כן אינה פשוט. Very interesting what he says here. He says, if you need a court, then you need the criteria of who is kosher to be a dayan. But if it's stam machloket bahalacha, and you have a smart woman, you're right there. Back then, he wasn't a feminist, you know. Says, yeah, she counts just like men. Because it's not a beidin.
Sefer Shoftim already, you know.
Yeah, that's what he said, yeah. So let's say Isser Veheter. She's well learned, whatever.
So this is
Nashim Chachmaniot, he says it. So that's interesting.
Like
This is a very interesting paragraph in the Sefer HaChinuch. I don't know how many people know about it, but we found it. Okay. Tov Yechezkel.
Thank you.